decided, hey, let's try it for this application, let's do this grant and see what happens. And we were awarded that grant. So a lot of the credit goes to the community support of the Central Minnesota Arts Board and JD and JD Studio, because that's kind of what shaped these opportunities. So we did the mentorship, and the goals of the mentorship were, I wanted to learn how to throw off the hump. Traditionally, the work can be thrown either individually, where you take like a fist size or the appropriate weight of clay and you throw it off of a wheel head. In this case, I want to learn a technique where you take about like 25 to 30 pounds of clay, form like a large cone of it, and you just throw the top of it. So you can repeat that process until the clay is gone. That was a different technique that I hadn't learned yet. I also learned how to throw with the karatsu wheel. This is a different type of wheel which requires a little bit more rhythm, a little bit more body motion, more balance. So that was kind of the logistical side of the mentorship. So how my work came forth is maybe what emerged. That's kind of where that title came from. It's like, how is my work coming forth in this process of these goals that we have? So we started out by throwing small pieces. I started out by throwing small pieces under JD's instruction. And those are the clay pillows that I'm getting a lot of questions about. Why do they call them pillows? Which I can answer that, but it's not essential to the talk. So I made a bunch of these small pillows, and they're not as difficult to throw because there's small amounts of clay. And after throwing a bunch of them, it was an opportunity for JD and myself to get together and talk about how to decorate them. You'll see that there's a consistent choice that I've made. And I'll explain a little bit how I got to that choice. So you can see on the wall, there's two different sets of the different ideas that I've been playing with a little bit. You know, dipping it partially and leaving a mark, dipping it with my hand, perhaps leaving a splash. And that's part of the transition. That's a part of how much can I explore and still find my voice. You know, how is it still going to be meaningful and speak to the type of work that I want to produce. After I'd done that a few times, we came up with a slip. And we made that choice because I wanted to have room for growth. That was a goal, to make a gesture and still have some room to grow. And that's what this line offered to me. I'm a pretty spiritual guy. I'm a theology student by academic major. So for me to put a spiritual meaning to my clay is important. And this line that I put on there, it was something I wanted to explore, but it established like a very strong meaning to me because theologically I view kind of creation and God as like an artist and a process of being created and being part of that creation. And these pieces are relating to that because for me to dip into that clay, this is a dip line, so like there's a partial dip, and then to pull it out, to leave a moment of a gesture onto that plate with my left hand, non-dominant. To leave that mark is to do it the same that I've done it on every piece, but it's always different. So that line for me was very spiritual to think that I've done this, plenty of times to do it again and again, but no single one is the same, yet they're all equal. And I wanted to also create a work that I could keep that going. And so when I moved forward to bowls and plates, it was a matter of how do I alter them but still leave room for this other thing. And when we moved forward on plates, that was where JD and I got together and we had a conversation. He asked me, basically put me on the spot and said, where's your voice? How are you going to move forward on this? And still leave room for where you can go in the future. And after making, I think I made like 20 or so pieces, and then they were all different. And I selected one. It's actually the one at the very end down there. That was the very first one that I threw like that and decided that one speaks to something. And I have room to grow on that piece. And we did very much the same thing with the bowls. It was, the basic form, round bowl with, pretty proportionate circle curve on the, round curve on the inside. And I had to alter it. I had to put my voice into it. And so I wanted it to relate to this spiritual sensation I was having of putting my mark on the edge, squaring it off a little bit, but also leaving the surface design. So that's how a lot of my work came forth out of the internship, was to relate to that. To be simple, to be beautiful, and also allow room for growth in the lab, to be able to elaborate on it. At the end of the summer, it was an opportunity for me to come into the first wood firing I've ever had before. And that was an opportunity for community to really show itself and how much it really requires, because we fired all 3 chambers out of the studio, so it took a week, or just a little over a week of firing the whole process through, and you just can't do that without having all the support. So that was an image where it was apparent to me that I need to have that support in my work. And that came forth also in the internship. So I'll move forward and talk a little bit about that. With the internship, it changed from learning the abilities to throw off the hump and getting used to wood firing. It was more, to what extent could I be a potter? Do I know how to run a studio? Do I know how to organize a firing space? How do I interact with other people at galleries? And so I had a chance to do that with JD, but it was different. The internship was different. So how was my work going to be different? For me, I wanted to work on handles. So we worked on the technical sides. All these things that are part of a process and a transition. The space on the other side of the title wall is a part of that transition. So for handles, we'll say, there are some pieces over there that were a part of that, where I was trying to throw a form, but attach a handle to it, which sounds pretty simple, but it can be very difficult to get right. Those pieces were a part of that, and when I got that voice, it came out in this type of picture, which is a simple curve, and it still has that same room for growth. The surface, I changed because I wanted to leave my print physically. That came about because the clay that I use comes from local and native locations. So for JD's studio, we use clay that comes out of Spring Creek in North Dakota, and we have some from St. Joe, and some from Grand Marais that I brought from family land. And I suppose on a few pieces it's a bit stronger, but I physically dipped my hand in the clay in this earth that I understand, partly because it's family land, but also because